Hello and welcome to the Aquarists Podcast. I'm your host, Randy Reed. This episode of the Aquarists Podcast is sponsored by OASE. OASE is well known for their line of outdoor pond and water garden products and are now stepping into the indoor aquatics market. Their lineup includes products like the internal Bio Plus filters and external Biomaster canister filters. Both lines of filtration offer models with heater integration to help you declutter your tank and show off your plants and fish. OASE also has a great selection of aquariums in their Biorb line. Their Biorb Cube aquarium actually won the award for Best Aquarium Product at the Super Zoo Trade Show. So check out these great products and more by clicking on the links in the show notes. Now, on to the interview. Today's date is Tuesday, May 21st, 2019. My guest today is Robert Bennett.
Hello.
Robert is the... Oh, you're talking during my intro. It's all right. We're going to keep that in there. Robert Bennett is the general manager at Aquarium Co-Op. He's a good friend, I can say now, since I've been with the co-op, and very, very knowledgeable. And he's a recent celebrity now, doing the new face of the unboxings on the Aquarium Co-Op YouTube channel. So, Robert, thank you very much for coming on the Aquarius Podcast, and welcome.
Thank you. I'm looking forward.
Yeah, so typically that's how that's supposed to work. We do the bio, and then the guest says something, but that's totally all right. So yeah, what is... Well, no, before we say that, let's build it up a little bit more. So yeah, you were... how long have you been the general manager at Aquarium Co-op?
Corey has brought me in, I think...
Or at least the store manager.
Well, I came in as a store manager 2016 of August.
Okay.
Like he brought me in specifically to become the manager, and so he could do what he's doing now. That was kind of what he was laying it out. It didn't quite happen right away for him to do the travels, but... I guess we just go right into like how it came to be. Like,
yeah, sure. Like, I guess, yeah, because you were kind of the number one customer.
Yeah, I was kind of the number one customer. I was Mr. Moneybags coming in, what we call the whale out there in the sales world. You let these guys do whatever they want to do in the shop. So I would come in like probably every like Wednesday or Thursday. Typically was my days off. At the time I was working at Little Caesars Pizzeria. What I call my dark years. And I actually, so how I came across was, I just remember one day my mom was like, hey, back when newspapers were a thing, there's an article about this really cool fish shop down in Edmond. You should check it out maybe on your next day off.
Because you're in Mukilteo, right?
I live in Mukilteo, okay. Yeah. And
so for those that don't know, Mukilteo to Edmonds, that's kind of like 2 towns over, but towns here are very compressed together.
Yeah, so like 20 miles, like kind of north.
Okay.
Or no, actually not even that. It's 13 miles, I think, from like door to door.
So not far at all.
Yeah. So I was not too long out of college, just kind of working I was starting to like get back into the hobby on everything. Starting to like build up my empire is what I call it.
And your fish tank empire.
Well, at that time it wasn't really fish tank. I think it was mainly reptiles I was keeping. I had like maybe a fish tank or two. Okay. I think at that point, and it was whatever I had from college. That was like total bro stuff, like an Oscar, and I think I caught like a bass, like I was fishing for, and I caught like a little baby bass. I had like a 55-gallon fish tank. I had like the bass was going too huge.
Oh man. Well, I don't think you actually listen to the podcast, which is fine. I'm not going to be offended. You live and breathe fish, so. Yeah. The idea that you would actually consume a fish podcast on your downtime seems maddening. But if you want to listen, cool, no worries. But I relate the Oscar to like the classic Americana, like having a Trans Am in your garage. Yes, like if you had an Oscar and a 55, like you had a Trans Am in your driveway.
It was Oscar. It was like muscle fish, monster fish. You could kind of almost classify, but not everyone's like that. But I was definitely would have been that classified kind of guy. Like, oh, this guy's coming in. He wants the cool big stuff. So I'm kind of building up around that time, like working. When I was doing my job, I was looking for like the cool monster fish. Anyway, so I come down and check the shop out, and I liked it. And I was like, that's a pretty cool, clean run shop.
But he didn't have monster fish then.
No, he didn't. Still don't have monster fish now. I think I wanted to like get into like shrimp. Mm-hmm. I don't remember if it was just seeing it there, but I feel like it was one of my friends was telling me, oh, we should play with shrimp. They're kind of cool. And I was like, all right, maybe I'll do a nano tank. And I thought like the little idea of a planted nano tank would be sweet. So yeah, I went to PetSmart and I bought like the top fin 5-gallon kit, found out the light bulb sucks and the filter's way too powerful. So I'm like starting to like piece together stuff, and slowly I'm buying it from Corey's. And
that was back when Corey was actually in the shop.
In the shop. And I don't know if the QT room was really built out. It was different from what the QT room it now, with the nice kind of acrylic stuff.
Okay.
Like I think he used those widescreen slim tanks that Aquarium makes.
Interesting.
Like a 12-gallon, but they're super tall, but like they're like 8 inches front to back in depth. But I remember buying, and I still have it. It's not doing anything now, but it was a 4-gallon cube tank. And right when I had that, put that next to that little 5-gallon tank, and I was trying to do plants and shrimp, and I failed miserably out of both.
Why do you think you failed miserably? What do you think is going on?
Well, I think it was because I ran a huge ray over the 5-gallon tank, so it was just way too much light.
Okay.
And I was putting the Java fern in the ground, the Nubius is in the ground. I remember fighting algae like crazy, and I was using the C-Chem fertilizer and just totally confused on how to do what. Did I refrigerate this? The 4-gallon tank actually did okay. It was like some Brigate rasboras and blue velvets. It got like a little bit of that light bar fed into that tank, and it was just like a perfect amount, so that tank did all right.
Interesting.
But I end up like usual, I go on to the next thing, and the tank gets occupied with something else, and those tanks are no longer operational. But anyway, so I would just kind of come in about Wednesday, kind of like to check out, see what he had, and I was buying blackworms, but I mainly went there. I was kind of like the old guy going to the cafe. I just wanted to shoot the bull, go in there, and I wanted to talk reptiles of Lamont. And there were a few times where I'm like, I don't really want to talk to Corey. I want to talk to Lamont. But then I would talk to Corey about fish. Like I felt like I found Lamont, and I was like, hey, he was a good guy. I still like him. I wish I could talk to him. So Lamont, if you're listening, Robert wants to chat with you on reptiles. But I would usually want to talk to Corey with fish and Lamont with reptiles.
Okay.
And sometimes if I got the joy of both of them, it was sweet. But I would be the dude standing around there for like an hour or two.
Yeah. So you were the guy when I would come in on the weekend with my son, who was, let's say, a year and a half at that time, going into a tropical fish store when it's 80 degrees in the store. And you've got this, less than a toddler, or even when he was at toddler age, like you're trying to get help, you're just trying to get some cardinal tetras and a plant and get out of there. And we've got somebody like you chatting it up, which I'm torn on that, because I think a fish shop should be an inviting place. It should be a welcome place.
Sometimes I do get to customers like that where I'm like, man, was I like that? But I actually, I do remember, like, I'd let people, not get customers like that, and if I saw a group of people, I'm like, no, go ahead and help them. I would just kind of lurk off in the back corner, and I kind of soak up a little bit what I was watching, what they were doing, and listening in.
Yeah, I mean, conversation with people is fun. Like, even if you're in a sales to customer capacity, I may leave it as an Easter egg one day exactly what industry I was in, but I did sales for almost a decade, and that's what put me through college, was commission sales. And beyond the actual just trying to sell somebody something, like, there's some just really good conversation you can have with people, and so there's really nothing wrong with that. Yeah. And if the fish store is going to kind of be this barbershop place where you can come in and just have some good conversation around a specific hobby or a specific topic, like, nothing wrong with that. I just wish on the weekend, and it's going to be a struggle. Like, we're probably never going to be able to find this balance, but overstaffing so that we can let people have that barbershop experience, but then also help people that just need to get in. They just need to get some sinking wafers and some dechlorinator.
I get that quite a bit.
Yeah. So we've got the ferry system here, and we're down the road from the ferry, and people that are going to take that public ferry in their car across the water, right? Like, it runs on a schedule, so people that don't know the ferry system, like, that's a whole thing, right?
Yeah.
Public transportation. So
it's like trying to catch an airplane, I guess, if you're in the Midwest.
So let's take it a step back even further. Like, how did you get started? Like, when was the first time you actually kept a fish tank?
Well, I was born into a household with a fish tank, so my dad was keeping stuff when I was little. So I remember, and I still have a fond memory of this tank, and I kind of want to buy one. It was a hexagon tank. I don't remember what the exact dimensions, but I would say it had to be like a 20-gallon tank. So that's a tank I grew up with, like metal stand, air pump, hexagon tank, kind of like lightly planted, and it probably had a few tetras and corridoras.
Like live plants?
I remember my dad buying live plants.
Nice.
And I think we went to like fake plants when I kind of took over, but so my dad, he passed away when I was young, and probably a little bit of period where my mom was trying to take care of the tank, and I was just too young for it because I was 4 or 5. And so I kind of actually kept reptiles. In first grade, I think I got my first like lizard, and I don't think I really got fully back into the fish game. I think we kind of like pieced together a tank, if I remember in my head, like from that period. I think my mom was kind of doing it, but I remember getting my own actual fish tank. Was not even really a fish tank. You know those pen pal containers?
Oh, the like critter keepers?
The critter keepers. Yeah. It was that, and I think I had a Jack Dempsey in it.
Oh, jeez.
Yeah, with those little Penplax, replaceable cartridges that you buy at like Fred Meyer's or like Walmart.
What is it?
They were like, They'd be cool if you could pop them open, but I don't think you could ever pop them open. It was like sponge on one end, and it had carbon on the other end, and it went into this kind of like aqua green little clip-on piece, and it was suction cup to the side of the tank, and it was air-powered. They actually were kind of, if I recall, like a decent little filter. You'd buy like a little 2-pack replacement for like not much. I've seen them occasionally. It's usually like Fred Meyer's, like is where I see it. That's kind of.
I've got a laptop in front. I'm curious.
Folks, Fred Meyer's would be like your mega. It'd be like your one-stop grocery store.
It's like a super Walmart,
but like nicer because it's owned by Kroger. So anyway, I had that, and I remember we went to this place. I lived in Omaha, and it was called Earl May, and that's where I went and kind of bought a lot of my first fish. And the lady there was like, "No, that's the wrong tank. You got to get a bigger tank." So
it's probably one of these guys, one of these little like.
Totally, it's that one right there in the middle.
The double one, or this guy right here that I'm pointing.
The single one, yeah, single one.
Okay, so it's like it looks like the top piece to an under gravel filter.
Yeah.
Where you see the exposed charcoal, and then you're saying that there's a filter underneath it. So it looks like it's a 1 by 3 inch kind of rectangular piece of plastic with filter media inside.
Yeah. So I think it was mechanical and
it actually
chemical.
On the packaging for this Penplex product, like it actually shows that Critter Keeper on the card.
Yeah.
On the
so I think that we were just kind of like, hey,
card.
that probably made sense.
Yeah. I mean, that's how it's being marketed to you. So,
so I was keeping, that's how I kept everything. Like I was doing, African clawed frogs. I would keep in that kind of stuff, and I think I procured like around at that time a 5-gallon hexagon tank. But anyway, the lady was like, "No, this tank's way too small." So I remember for Christmas that year, my mom's like, "Oh, I'm going to give you a bigger tank." And what she gives me a 10-gallon.
Nice.
But that's a monster tank to me when I was a little kid.
Sure.
So it was, with the undergravel plate and the heater. It was one of those heaters that didn't go fully Andy. I had to actually stay a little bit above the water. I don't know if you remember those guys, but
I don't think I ever used one of those now.
Yeah. So anyway, that's how I kind of kept my Jack Dempsey until we moved up here. I'm giving them off, to some pet shop when we moved. But
and how many years was this that you had your Jack Dempsey?
I had him like for several years.
Wow.
I think I grew him up like I would say decent for a 10-gallon tank, but my head I want to say he was at least 6 inches.
Yeah.
Granted, they should be like a foot, but I'd say 10-gallon for a little kid doing it out of a 10-gallon tank.
Do you remember what your water schedule routine was like back then?
Terrible.
Okay.
I probably topped it off weekly, and I remember monthly I would clean the thing, but I didn't understand how you clean the gravel filters. I didn't gravel back. I would just rip everything out and like wash it in the bathtub.
Yep.
Amazing my fish didn't die.
No, that is such a constant theme of people that I've interviewed where they're like, yeah, man, when I was a kid, like the things that we were doing with the tank, and myself included, there was the once a year, there was the annual strip down of our 55-gallon tank.
I think I was doing it like monthly for that guy.
Okay.
But I'd always be like, well, why isn't my other stuff like living? But I started like piecing together like I was still keeping those Critter Keepers. So I probably had like 3 or 4 like little fish tanks when I was grade school through middle school. And one was like a brackish tank, and Omaha, I'd go out to the ponds and I'd catch tadpoles, little baby bullheads, like little catfish. I'd keep those in those guys, and usually raise them up, and I'd either give them to a friend who had a pond, or I'd just dump them back into the pond when I was a kid and go collect the next thing.
No, that's cool.
So that was kind of like my entry into the aquatic keeping, and definitely doing the brackish kind of got me interested in doing saltwater. So I was infatuated with going to get a saltwater tank going into high school.
Oh yeah. So going back to the reptile thing, I feel like if you're keeping reptiles or amphibians, like you already have it kind of ingrained in your DNA that you could transition and also be an aquarist, being a fish keeper.
And I don't even know if that was even a thought. I think it was just like, well, of course I have to have a fish tank next to the lizard tank or something like that, But I think for fish, like I don't remember ever like targeting out like really wanting a fish or something like that. I feel like people come in the shops and they kind of know what they want, unless they're completely blind coming in and they're just like, hey, we just want to keep a fish and tell me what to do. But I think I just kind of went in like, yeah, I'll get like 3 of those, like Black Widow tetras or something like that.
How often does that play out? Where you're in the store and somebody comes in, like a family or like whoever it is, whatever the customer is, whatever the demographic, they come in and just say, hey, never kept a fish tank before, I want to keep one now.
Every Saturday.
Every Saturday.
Every Saturday. So like those Vista tanks, that's usually what they're getting sold for.
Okay.
It's some kind of either combination, either like kid want to fish at a fair or possibly one from school, or the parents want to get the kids used to keeping something. But that's about every weekend I have 1 or 2 of those kind of customers.
And how does that play out? Like how does that customer interaction play out with you kind of showing them what they need to get?
Usually pretty good, and they're never really shocked. I kind of tell them up front, like 10-gallon tank. Average cost is going to be about $250, for buying everything. Usually your cost is going to be all up front. Now, if you want to go bigger, it's going to be a little bit more.
And that Vista kit's got everything. It's got water conditioner, it's got the aqua clear, it's got lights, it's got...
Yeah, and then if you got the 16 and 23 gallon, you get the heater, so it's like a perfect deal. The 8.5 is kind of a little weird with not having the heater. But that usually makes it a little easier for like a transaction happening, because it's basically what I call plug and play stuff. You just need to go home with your substrate. Because we are a very plant-focused shop, get them a few easy plants I call like plug in and forget kind of plants, like crypts or something like that. And come see me a week later with a water sample, and we should be ready to go. And then I like to take it easy when they come in.
You don't send them home with some fish and a bottle of beneficial bacteria?
Beneficial bacteria, no. There have been a few times where they have the fish, like fish might be in the car, like they won the betta, and we got to make this work.
Oh, nice.
So that's always a little difficult. Luckily, those always seem to turn out all right from what I could tell. I think the bettas are just luckily a hardy fish that could kind of handle some of the abuse.
Yeah. I love when I go into the store, when I go shop side, and I see, the dad or the mom or both, and they're in there with their young kids, and like the whole family's excited to be in there. Like that's one of the greatest things I think for this hobby. Like something that just really gives me such great hope is to see how positive the reactions are from everybody in the family. And it's not like typically it's not like there's just one mopey person. Maybe they left the mopey child in the car, but like when they're in the store, they're so excited and they're just looking at all the different fish, and they're so enthralled with the plants and the clod frogs and the snails that we have and shrimp and the whole 9 yards. Like they're just really getting into the experience, and that makes me super happy to see that.
And it goes two ways. It's either the kid really gets into it, and I love those customers. I love working with the kids. Like when they're like little 8-year-olds, and you're like, "Hey, how's your day? How are you doing in school right now? Like, what's going on in your tank? Oh, your betta's Miss Princess Bella or something like that." Where you have to tell them the betta's a female, but the parents know different. Or it goes to the other thing where the parents get super into it, and you could see the dad or the mom kind of like, all right, we got the 10-gallon tank down there in the studio, the 55 is going in there.
That's awesome.
And they want to take over, and it's either one way or the other, I always feel like. But I love seeing if they go home with the smaller kind of tank that you could kind of get the seed in the head, like bigger goes a little bit better, and it's kind of like, well, if they don't kill the thing and they could do the water changes, let's get the bigger tank. So I love seeing that hobby kind of grow.
And so when it comes time to fish selection, and maybe even plant selection, but more so fish, are you vicariously living through them in terms of this is Robbie's flavor of the week fish? Like those pie tetras, you're like, yeah, man, this is the fish for you. You're starting out. This thing's awesome, because I know you were really digging those.
They're super cool, and I saw the last few. Like there it is. I'm waiting to get those back on the list.
Or you just like, I've got to send them home with some neon tetras.
It's usually neon tetras. I want them to go home with a good experience. I don't want to send them home with like a train wreck.
We don't want to send them home with a train wreck, but it's we could send them home with white clouds. We could send them home with neons.
And I will give them. I'll walk them through. I'll be like, hey, here's like my 5 like easy fish, and kind of some different kind of scenarios. Like, hey, you want a little bit more aggressive? Maybe the paradise fish. Like you want the old school classic. Let's go the white clouds. We just want to go the tried and true neon tetras. And it's kind of up to them. If they're like, nah, I really want something single, then we're going to start looking into the Grammies and the bettas. A lot like every time everyone stops by and wants the ram, like the German blue ram. Like, nope, you gotta don't kill us off for like a month or two, and then we could start talking about the German blue ram. I would consider that to be like the hardest fish we have in the shop. But no, I don't try to like live through them like Rob's like secretly the monster fish keeper kind of guy. Doesn't try to like send them home with like an arowana or anything like that. So.
I was just thinking more so in terms of just the color and style of the tetras, right? Like
for
the most part, the tetras are...
I stick to like the basics, like their silver tips. I'll let them know if they're a little nippy. The black neons and the glow light tetras. I agree with Corey 100%. Like throw a hammer at those things so they could live through them. So definitely recommend get them on their first go. I want that to be a happy go.
I've got my buddy right now that I work with at one of the aerospace companies that I was at, and he went from just kind of being a casual watcher of the Aquarium Co-Op YouTube channel when I had left my previous job and joined the co-op, and he and I kept in touch. We've kept in touch for several years now, and he started checking out the videos, and it's just, I think he watches like 5 or 6 channels, and they're all over the place with all of his various interests that he has, and one of them is the fish tank thing. And the only fish tank they had was a small beddable for their daughter, and I don't think the family had much interest in it, unfortunately. The fish had passed away.
Quite a bit too.
But now, like, he is just so invigorated and like charged up to get a fish tank, and so I've steered him in the direction of a 29-gallon tank, and it's going to be planted, yada yada. He knows where he's going to put it. He's super excited. Corey actually addressed one of his live streams to him. He framed it as, how to help somebody get into the hobby.
Yeah.
And one of the struggles I have right now with him is, it's definitely something that he wants it to be a family activity, and his young daughter, it's, what do you want in there? And she's like, I love puffers. I love snails. I love shrimp. And it's like, no. Like you can't do that. And it's like, can I do this combination? And it's like a text, a couple times a week. Can I do this? Can I do that?
Yeah.
Like, it's still the same twist on the same variant of what you're talking about. Like, no, you can't do that. And so it's you've got this excitement of somebody coming fresh into the hobby, but it's also trying to give them that advice where you really hope that they're going to take it. And I think he will. At least unless he goes, rogue and goes somewhere else. But I'll show you a picture of him, so when he comes in, you'll never sell him a snail on one day and then some dwarf puffers the next.
I definitely have gotten that a few times where they're like, they're going through, like, some people, what I guess you'd call it like grocery shop list. They're going like, oh, give me this, and like, that's weird. They got snail, shrimp. Now they're talking pea puffers, and you're like, all right, I don't want to be too nosy, but like, is this going to the same tank?
Right.
And they're like, no. And you're always like, half you're like, you're screwing with me. You got caught, and you're still trying to go home with this. But I can't. It was what we call, you warn them, and you could always issue the speeding ticket later, is what we call it.
Yeah. And it's one of those, on average, this will probably not work out. But you may have read, or you may have watched, or you may even experience that minority, that sliver of, man, my pea puffers and my mystery snails are best friends.
Well, for the longest time, we actually had a shrimp hanging out, and I think in the pea puffer tank. It was just like a clear, total, what they would call like a coal cherry shrimp, hanging out in the puffer. You just kind of dip down into the filter, and I think eventually it was eaten once he molted. But I saw it there in the shop one time. We had it going for about 6 months, I think. So I've seen it work.
Well, with my betta, I had ghost shrimp in there, and for the first month, it was all hunky dory. Everything was fine. All the ghost shrimp were there.
And went psycho.
And then all of a sudden, one day, he flipped a switch and started getting down.
Those really nice, sleek little 3-gallon tanks we brought in. I put one of those bettas that came in on this last shipment in there, and I noticed all my cherry shrimp went down, and the algae was starting to build up. And he went rogue and murdered off all the cherry shrimp. He's left the mono shrimp alone. But yeah, just one by one took down like 7, 8 nice looking cherry shrimp. So I was like,
oh man, good times. So what is since we're talking about customers coming into the store, what are like the most common pieces of advice that you find yourself giving?
Patience is one of them. Especially if they're building a tank, especially if we're staying on top of like a new customer, it's patience. Don't rush this. And yes, you're going to have some hardships here and there, but that's just part of the hobby. You have to kind of earn your stripes there. It's like people ride motorcycles. They drop their bike at some point. It's going to happen.
I disagree with that. I've never dropped a motorcycle. I've crashed dirt bikes, different story, okay. But I've never dropped my road bike.
This is spring season. Robert's been watching motorcycle videos and talking motorcycle videos. But anyway, I feel like you're all going to have the algae issue, or you brought too many fish at some point. That's why I try to teach patience. Take it in 1 week at a time. Especially it's kind of fun if you have a kid coming into this hobby. Kind of gives you an excuse to come to the store every week.
That's actually really good. So instead of getting everything all at once, instant gratification, if you practice that patience, you can then reward yourself by having an adventure to your local fish store, every week or every other week, and actually picking something up.
It works out. As far as I can tell, it seems to work out. So for week one, well, let's just say like week one, they buy the tank and the plants and they set it up, and they come back a week later. And
what about a snail? Would you at least let them take a mystery snail home with their new tank?
Not necessarily. I prefer not to. I understand that sometimes hitchhikers might come in on the plants, but I try to, if I can, to keep any actual like live organism I'm charging you for, besides a plant, going home on the first week. Just because I don't want to deal with the mess of like, oh man, this ammonia spike murdered off like 4 mystery snails. Just kind of something I just, as a manager, you just don't want to deal with that refund or that apology.
Sure.
So I really try to preach like, wait a week. And I like to do, like I said, like neon tetras, for example. Like, all right, let's say they're using a 20-gallon tank. Let's just take it easy, because the test strips, sometimes you could clearly tell the tank's cycling. Sometimes you're like, I'm not 100% sure, because you don't know if they're following their instructions. So we'll just take it easy the first week. In that case, I say, let's go home with 5 to 8 neon tetras, and we're going to call it good, and see how they do for the week. And the next week, you like these guys, we'll add more. Or maybe you'll notice some food collecting on the bottom. We'll go get the Corydoras. And then I like the cleaning crew, like the algae eaters, by week 3. And plecos in maybe week 4, because that's a perpetual poop machine, so we don't really need that be bomb in their tank. Week 1. What about
how's the goby been for you? Because I know you said for an algae eating fish, you've really been digging on the ornate goby?
Yeah, well, I've been liking gobies for the past like year and a half, 2 years. I've kind of noticed them. Eating algae, and in that setup, the ornates have been selling really well. But if you watch them, if you give that tank like 5 minutes of watching, you'll see that guy grubbing along on the leaves and munching on stuff.
And I think so. Just you explaining that, right? Like how you've observed how the goby is something that for the past year you've enjoyed as an algae eater. Like that experience is so unique to somebody that works in a fish store, right? Like you are a home hobbyist, you have your own tastes and preferences for your home aquariums, but just being exposed to the sheer volume of fish and the variety that we sell at Aquarium Co-Op, like you have been immersed in all of these different types of fish, and fish that you would never personally keep, in your entire lifetime as an aquarist. Like you are now being exposed to them, and you're seeing all of their, quirks and traits and all of these things that I think is just so fascinating.
Yeah,
it's like that's such a unique experience.
Yeah, and that's personally, why wonders you might, if you're watching unboxing videos, you're like, oh man, he's always going on with weird stuff. That's because it's something I want to play with. I see tetras every day. Robert wants to go home and play with a cichlid, something I can't have in the shop. The basic angelfish. So just I can kind of experience and learn something from it.
How have your personal tastes in what you keep, how have they evolved from the Jack Dempsey? Like if you were to high level kind of track, like, oh yeah, these are the kind of fish that I've been interested in since the Jack Dempsey.
I definitely African cichlids, just because they have kind of a unique personalities, and I'm really infatuated with like Lake Tanganyika. And I was playing with them a little bit back in high school days, but I didn't really know what I was doing, and I wasn't really reading up on them so much, but just learning Lake Tanganyika's, how each fish kind of has its own job duty. So that's kind of a fun thing to have, and setting a tank up where, like, yes, this guy, he claims the rocks. That's his thing. He darts in and out of the rocks. This guy wants to be in the shell. This guy's hanging out up in the upper level. So it's kind of like playing with cichlids and setting up a community tank like you would with tetras, where you'd have like and some kind of Corydoras, where you like Corydoras at the bottom kind of guys, like your shell dwellers, and like your neon tetras are kind of darting in and out of the plants like the guys out of the rocks, and you got your hatchet fish on top. But it's just playing with a little bit different fish. Being a cichlid, not all are huge, and certainly got that awesome color, especially with the Malawis. Why I've played with monster fish, for chance, that was probably just a teenager kid. Like, I'd have all my buddies like on my street come in when I was having a fish that I don't know how the pet store had it, but I was totally missold it, and it was a gar. It was. Nice. I thought I was going home with a South American needlefish, and I remember putting it in my tank.
I'm going to Google image South American needlefish relative to a gar.
So I thought I had a needlefish, and it shows you how much I was doing my research. I was buying stuff impulse.
Man, those are
kind of a weird fish. So I'm going through the book. I had like this old 1980s fish book. And
I guess I could see the gar needlefish.
Doesn't look like a needlefish, and I find out I have some kind of long nose gar. Like, it was a baby, and So I had that for like a few months before it totally got too big for the tank, and just like any big fish in little tanks, it doesn't end well.
Yeah, I mean, like you, I was definitely all about the monster fish. I think, God, where did he come from, my Oscar? I think it came from like the local new PetSmart that was in the shopping center by my house. It was either the PetSmart, or I might even purchased my Oscar from Walmart. Because I lived around some Walmarts. The Walmarts in California, the ones I grew up around, they actually have the aquatic section. And say what you will about it. That's I've definitely purchased fish from Walmart.
Some people, that's all you have. I think when you go to some places like North Dakota or something like that, that's probably your fish shop.
Wow. Yeah. So yeah, that's definitely where my Oscar had either Walmart or PetSmart, but just bigger, larger, kind of wet pet fish, and it is hard when you go into a PetSmart, right? Because a lot of people, PetSmarts are in shopping centers with a lot of places to eat, like your Red Robin, your movie theater, and if you need to kill time and you need somewhere to go, it is. Are you going to go into the Joann's Fabric, or are you going to go into PetSmart if you've got a half hour to kill?
PetSmart.
Everybody's going to go into PetSmart.
That's what I do. Like when I go to the movie theater up here in Everett, I'll go to PetSmart if it's open.
Yeah, maybe 2% of people will go into the Joann's Fabric. Yeah. Everybody else is going to go into the PetSmart. And when you go into the PetSmart, and if they have a fully stocked Oscar tank, and those fish are just following you around, and you're just waving your finger around, like it is hard to deny the attraction to a little 2-inch Oscar.
They're cute and adorable.
Like that is hard. Like, I don't care who you are. That is a hard thing to deny. And then from there it was Frontosas, and I've never actually got into the Rift Lake cichlids beyond the fronts. But definitely having the bigger fish and being somebody in 2003. When was it? 2006, 2007 is when I got into the hobby as an adult, if you will, and using monster fish keepers. Like that was my online resource, and seeing these guys that were building these massive cinder block tanks in their their basements. Most of them would put like a shark in it, but when that's what you're exposed to, like that's your number one forum that you're going to, because I think I'd probably browse a couple other forums, but the Monster Fish Keepers website was just so packed with pictures that you're just immersing yourself in all of this awesomeness.
I think it's actually a pretty. I have been on it for a while, but it seemed like a few years ago it wasn't a bad forum. I think for a fish forum, they had.
I think it still exists. I think
it still exists. And I always thought it was not bad ran. Mm-hmm. Now you get into what they have, like they call the quote unquote fish Nazis out there. So you got the Airwana, and you mentioned you have it in the 180. Like everyone has the Airwana, I feel like, in the 180, just because space wise, no one has the 240s and the 500s. Like at least that's a small fraction of people. Most people are throwing way smaller tanks. So if those guys say they have it in there, they're getting like ripped apart on the forum. That's kind of, I think, that's a little bit of a downfall of some of the forums. Where people just kind of get pretty cruel on there.
Yeah. Well, now they just live in the comment section of YouTube videos and all sorts of other stuff. Speaking of which, so since you started doing the unboxings, and you're kind of the new face of the unboxings, and I think you do a fantastic job at it. I think you bring a lot of additional insight. Again, that kind of store manager level insight to the unboxings. I think they're fantastic. Have you been surprised by any of the comments that you've read?
I try not to, if they're getting a little cruel, I don't really want to read them too much. I think I'm a little too I don't want to get ripped today. So I saw someone didn't like the comedy action or whatever.
Yeah. But there's some mean stuff out there though.
Yeah, there's some mean stuff. I definitely say. I think it was the one where Corey and I were doing the import order, and it was like someone's like, I bet if it was a $20 bill, he would have picked it up. And it was a rock, but people.
What did they think it was?
They thought it was a Corridor or something like that. Yeah, I do open some of my bags a little weird. Yes, I've adjusted it since then. But we're not trying to be stupid or mean when unbagging a fish into a tank. But some people got pretty nasty on there.
Yeah.
For whatever reason, but I think that's just that's what, unfortunately, this day and age, people behind a keyboard kind of unleash, and they know I'm not coming over there to correct them. I don't even have an account on YouTube, so I'm not even gonna
Yeah, but on a more positive kind of surreal note, I guess people are now coming into the store. And
so that's cool. So I do like that, and I do like anybody when they're like, that's like this, I like Robert. I'm so glad he's on there. I'm like, yeah, sure, it makes my day. And I still will remember, probably, I guess, till the day I die, assuming I keep building any kind of this fame. getting asked for that first autograph.
That's awesome.
A surreal moment. And I had to do my second one. Jimmy caught me the other day. Some kid wanted my autograph too. But the first one, I thought a lot of people for whatever reason think I'm Corey in the shop. So I was like, they're like, oh, I like you. I was like, oh, I'm not Corey. They're like, oh, I know, you're Robert. And they're like, oh. I was like, well, can we get an autograph? And I think I was like, okay, but I'm not Corey. Because I think I was only in, at that point, 2 or 3 unboxings had started. But someone was already infatuated with, the way I was doing them. So I feel like I can keep that train going.
No, that's awesome, man. And I think I think it's this cool glimpse of, even before joining the co-op team, that was probably one of my favorite things to actually watch, was just the unboxings. And I don't know what it is about it. I really don't. I mean, maybe it's just, again, kind of living vicariously. Like, we all wish that we could just, in our collections on a weekly basis, open up 4 or 5 boxes of just all these different fish. So it's kind of like living vicariously as a fish keeper, multiple tank syndrome. It feels like Christmas.
Yes.
Like, it's like the ultimate Amazon delivery.
Yeah, every Thursday is a Christmas day for me, especially for those unboxings. And just because, since I'm running the shop, I want something always a little different every unboxing if I can, just to bring a little spice to the shop. And assuming the fish vendors are, allowing me to do that. Sometimes they have a little bit of a weak ordering list, but if it's a good ordering list, I always try to bring something cool in there. And I also want the world to see it, and hopefully we have cool B-roll footage. So some people might be, what I'm trying to shoot for is someone who might be interested in that fish out there. Maybe they're just trying to find some kind of video before they go plunk down money on that critter. At least they have something they could kind of oh, they have it there, and I could hopefully maybe add some bit of my information to it, just to maybe influence them on their decisions.
Yeah, I think even, as we talked about the tetras before, if with your experience you're able to share that, oh yeah, that's a nippy fish.
Yeah.
That's huge. It's a great looking tetra, whatever it may be, but it's a nippy fish, and you're like, oh man, I didn't, I was kind of going through this various, fish base or whatever online resource you're using, and you're kind of image shopping for a new fish that you want to get for your tank, and to hear that context, that maybe that's not being shared online from somebody and it's information again, and I really want to emphasize that it's somebody that has probably handled in some capacity hundreds of this species, as opposed to, oh yeah, I had 5 rummy nose tetras once.
Yeah,
I'm an expert on it.
Yeah, and also if I can, if Jimmy's doing his job getting the B-roll, what the fish actually looks like, because obviously if I type in a name, look, I'm looking at your wall here, flower horn, those are all exceptionally great photos, and if I were to take one of those names and look that up, I'm probably going to see nothing but exceptionally great photos and probably some poopy ones. And let's say we go on YouTube, you're going to have someone probably keeping that fish, the cool videos are going to get all the hits, it's going to come up on the search. It's probably someone keeping it in the best fish tank situation possible. And we can use the tetras for that example. Maybe they have those pie tetras I brought in a tannic water setup, but our tanks at the shop aren't going to be quite tannic. So this is going to be more like what you're going to bring home to kind of give that idea of what reality is, rather than just a slice of what a perfect situation is. That's what I'm kind of aiming for, hopefully, in unboxing videos and B-roll. Hopefully, Jimmy takes a good photo, but not something that's photoshopped, I guess.
Yeah. What are some fish that you wish you could bring into the shop? If we could build out a little section that was just dedicated for you.
No, I would like to I actually wouldn't mind having a little bit of the cichlid market. Because that is a market, and
South American. Are we talking
both? Probably,
okay.
Just a little bit of both. Not something too crazy, but if I could have 6 tanks to each, 6 tanks to a South American, 6 tanks to an African, wouldn't have to be crazy. So whoever's running that area wouldn't be overwhelmed. But that is a market that we do kind of miss out on a little bit, and it does kind of suck. I could talk their ear off and give them every information. Maybe if we're patient enough, we could do an order on, but generally they're just going on to the next pet shop to go buy, their fish, and hopefully they have a good experience out of it. Maybe they do, maybe they don't. But I would love to capture a bit of that market, and also just bring a little bit more joy for me, because then I get to play with something in the store that I like. I don't know if I'd really want to bring in the Oscars and the giant fish.
So you would still want to bring in cichlids that would all fit within a 40 gallon.
I think that'd be a perfect. Okay. Yeah, something Like I wouldn't want to bring in like wolf cichlids.
Unless it's for yourself.
Unless it's for myself. I mean, like Oscars, it's like, yeah, they're adorable, but in reality, would I really want to sell them in the store? Like, probably not, because you're looking at least a 75, if not bigger. And
there's
a lot of people are always trying to, pawn them off. But if it was like Mambunas or something like that, I don't know, they could be horrible creatures themselves. Yeah. But they're much easier to contain.
Yeah. It was interesting when I was in San Francisco visiting with Zenzo, and we went to some fish stores that, one fish store in particular, they had, just your exotic big fish and shovel-nosed cats and just all sorts of other fish where it's like, who's the fish keeper keeping this?
Yeah.
Like this, you can't be selling that many of these a week.
No. Like, okay, this upcoming week, I'll probably have an arowana. I'll have an arowana coming in. And I do sell that occasionally, but do I want to have like 6 of those coming in every week? No. Mm-hmm. Hopefully, I don't flip it like to the first person coming to the store. I want it to go home to someone who has a proper setup, and there are those people out there, but it's slim. And that's why I would not want to do monster fish up here. I've seen a pet shop up in this area that used to kind of do it, and it doesn't turn well profit for you. And as you probably know, there's a lot of people who want to rehome fish, and that's a hard fish to rehome when you're getting to those big boys that are like 3 feet and above.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So.
Yeah, it's definitely an interesting, fish to keep, and how certain the big box chain stores will sell so many of those.
Yeah, it's
of that fish.
The Power 30, whatever they call it. They take like
Power 30.
I think it's the Power 30. I read that it's kind of like the demise of the mom and pop shops, and then you have now they call like the Power 30, for the reptiles and fish. It's like the top selling stuff.
Oh, okay.
Unfortunately, some of those top selling stuff are also make horrible pets for people.
Oh, wow.
If you're gonna go into reptiles, like green iguanas, it's kind of like the Oscar, adorably cute when they're like little 10-inch babies coming out of the egg. But you get a male at 6 feet, and he's in sex mode. He's not nice. Like they will rip your ankles up.
Oh, jeez. Good times.
But I guess it would have to be cichlids. When I was like I'll go back and forth with saltwater, and sometimes I'm like, I wish we could do saltwater, but that's just a whole other animal.
Yeah, I'll fight you tooth and nail on that one.
I wouldn't want to do it. There for like 3 months. I was kind of like, we could do saltwater, but no, I'd rather do cichlids, just because I know that's a market out there.
Would you have like a display tank set up of, hey, this is what a planted cichlid tank could look like?
Oh, totally. I mean, I keep plants with all my African cichlids. Mm-hmm. I have Valsinaria going in there. I have moss balls. I have like Java fern in there, Nubius, things like that. So they can do it. Mm-hmm. I mean, Corey's done a few videos on there, so I know there's a few people who claim it can't be done, or maybe they just, in their situation, their fish are just ripping stuff up. But heck, every tank I have has a plant in it. Mm-hmm. But yeah, that would be kind of cool, a display tank.
Yeah, I think so, because I think so many people are used to just seeing a tank for African cichlids that's just a pile of rocks.
It's a cookie cutter kind of look.
And maybe a blue background, right, on the outside of it. And that's and maybe a couple fake plastic plants in there.
Yeah.
But to really do it up in the store and see like, no, this is what this tank looks like day in and day out. And like it's a 75 gallon, right? The display tank with the planted display tank that runs no CO2.
Correct.
Okay, and the only thing we're doing on that is what? Easy Green
and Easy Iron.
Easy Green, Easy Iron, and a 3.0.
There's 2 3.0s on there just because I think just to get a little bit fuller light. I do feel like a 75 you might want to run 2 3.0s if you're doing a lot of plants.
Yeah, but what I'm getting at though is we are showing in person in our store day in and day out a tank that would defy convention, right? Like when you actually told me that we don't run CO2 on that tank, I was baffled because it's amazing. Like the lush growth of this tank is phenomenal, and all we're doing is we're using Easy Green, Easy Iron, and 3.0s.
Yeah,
2 3.0s. Like that's,
and there's 2 sponge filters on there.
Okay, 2 sponge filters for filtration. And this tank is awesome, and you've done a fantastic job of keeping that tank up, and it looks it's phenomenal. And to say, hey, this is something that you could be successful with at home. This is something that could look beautiful that anybody could have, and that kind of philosophy, that mentality. It even carried over to our trade show banner that we have for Co-op, where it's we basically took an image of one of our I don't know who did the skate, but it's just a beginner's skate, but it looks awesome. It's got Anubias, Java Fern, and some other plants in there, a little bit of hardscape, but it looks awesome. And it's, hey, this is low tech. Like, this is low tech. This is what you could have. And I think that same kind of extension to African cichlids of this, this goes against what the internet may tell you. This goes against what forums may tell you. You can be successful with this, with this setup, with something simple and easy.
A little backstory on that tank. So that tank used to be like a whole bunch of stuff. Like when I was a customer there, that tank sometimes was like Valsnaria tiger barbs, which I still think to this day was like one of the coolest setups Corey had running in there. The stripes on that barb just looked sweet with like just a bowed up tank. And then it would kind of occasionally, it was housing like a big puffer. And then I think when we were starting to grow into more plants, like when I started working there, it became like a sword collection bin, Amazon swords was just in there. And then eventually I think he was like, hey, let's get this tank back up to like a little bit of display, but I just want Valsnaria. But I'm always trying to push the limits a little bit secretly. And I think I was like, well, I kind of want to like put a snippet of this plant in there. And then sometimes it was stuff like we discontinued, like Sawtooth Hydro just never really did well. At least 2 years ago, maybe now that business is much more taken off. But it was a kind of plant, it needed to go in people's homes pretty quickly. So it'd be like, oh, that plant's getting dropped from our product line. Well, I'm going to take that last bit and stick it in there. So that's kind of actually how I built up that whole tank.
Oh, wow.
That was just basically...
Just leave-ins?
Like,
the leave-ins?
Yeah, it was kind of like the Noah's Ark of plants.
Oh, wow.
It was just kind of like a little bit of this and a little bit of that. And next thing I know is this cool, sweet planted tank. And I think it was somebody gave me... Occasionally I get gifted plants, and that's what that Pogostemon erectus, the one that looks like a horsetail fluffy thing. And we're putting it in there, and Corey came in one day. He's like, I'm digging this tank. I was like, yes. Everything he didn't want in there is in there now. And then I started putting like he wanted just neon tetras in there. And I want to throw some Corridoras. And now I think it looks cool with a whole bunch of different tetras.
It's awesome. Yeah, it is an awesome tank.
It's kind of a tank where we use it as, that Pogostemon octopus. Well, this is what it turns into. This is how big a big neon tetra is. This is what corridors look like in a big tank with a school. That's what we could kind of use that tank as a reference point, and it helps a lot. And I know it's certainly inspired a lot of people. Just like now, that little 3-gallon tank's doing a lot of inspiration.
What's the substrate in that tank?
Just sand and crushed coral.
Sand and crushed coral.
Sand and crushed coral.
That's awesome.
So,
which defies internet convention.
Defies internet convention, but I totally have to agree with Corey. Like, give me whatever substrate, and I will grow a plant. That's why I'd love to do something with. I think the next tank's going to have to be like deep river or shallow creek gravel. It's like the P grade gravel, because I feel like I get a lot of customers coming in and like, no, you can't grow anything in that. It has to be that expensive bag of fluval or Eco Complete. And I'm like, no, man, I think one of the coolest plant tanks we've ever had used to be up front, and it was just deep river gravel with like Amazon swords and some crypts and a tiger lotus. And that tank looked banging. It was just awesome with rummy nose tetras.
Oh, that's sweet.
So I would love to kind of get that back up in there. So that's something in the plan.
And the 90 cube, that's not running CO2 either, is it?
No, I think it used to, but I don't know when. That had to be back before I started.
But not anymore, though.
Not anymore.
Yeah, and that tank is also banging. It's
that's just sand in there too.
That's awesome.
Yeah, so that's the other tank I've kind of gussied up. I think a few employees kind of like would tweak around with it, but that's kind of like under my watch, but not quite as much as 75. 75 is like my baby. So.
Nice. What is so as a home hobbyist, what's a fish that's on your bucket list, or what's a setup that you want to set up really bad?
Next one, okay. So my total unicorn fish, which I want to do before I die, it would actually be a marine fish. I would love to keep a shark.
Okay.
But when people are thinking sharks, if they're listening to the podcast, maybe they don't really know on the marine sharks. So there's several types. The one I would want to do is what they call I'm probably butchering this name, the Bennett sharks. So they're the ones that sleep pretty much during the day, and they're active at night, and they kind of pretty much just hang out on the ground.
Oh, benthic.
Benthic, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. I make up my own words, folks.
No, you were close. I just actually, last podcast was Dr. Melissa Gibbs, and she had to break down benthic for me, because I was like, I'm pretty sure that's the bottom dwelling, but she clarified, yes, it is.
So there's the coral cat sharks, and they're those guys, and then you have like your standard, what you think of, like your white tips and your great whites, whatnot. They're the ones that just basically constantly swim all the time. I'm not interested in those guys. I'm interested in the bottom guys, and it's specifically the coral banded cat shark, only because the size is, I want to say 24 inches is average, 28 being about tops from my research. So it's a shark you could put into bare minimum would be a 180. Obviously, a bigger tank would be better. I was probably looking at like a 210 or maybe get a custom built. And that I feel like I could fit into a house like fairly easily. I like the epaulet sharks are a little bit bigger. They're more commonly found, but those guys are getting to like 3.5 feet, just so where I just don't feel like I can comfortably keep that.
No, this is definitely. I mean, it's a beautiful fish. Mm-hmm. It's a cool looking fish. I've got it pulled up here on Google Images.
So the coral banded cat shark, and I would probably just do probably like some kind of like large sergeant major damsels, a marine clown, something that obviously the guy's not going to eat. Be like your what we call like a Fowler fish tank, saltwater tank. So that'd be
fish only with live rock.
Correct.
FOWLR.
Yeah. So Fowlers would be, which I would say for anyone getting into the saltwater hobby, go Fowler. Don't really go with the corals. I see a lot of people wanting to play corals, but that's a whole new beast of a slippery slope there.
Yeah, I actually want to have somebody on. I've got my buddy that was episode 0 of the podcast. He's big into saltwater, and I think I may have him come on for a saltwater 101 episode, even though I make fun of saltwater all the time and say that it's the worst. But
I'll have to listen to that if you get him back on. Yeah. Or I'll have to now hunt down that first episode.
Well, so no, that's episode 0.
Oh.
So that was where I had basically called him, and I was testing out the recording and testing out my ability to actually conduct an interview. So that's something that was never published, and I actually think the audio file got corrupted and I lost that episode. But yeah, if I did do a saltwater episode, I think I would just have him come on and he and I would talk about break it down like I'm a 6th grader, right?
Yeah.
It's saltwater setups. So let's say, what's your unicorn setup for freshwater then?
So I was trying to think of that too. Probably a cold water tank.
Okay.
Native fish. I love native fish. That is like a little secret passion of mine. So like a properly done native fish setup that would be legal.
Native to the Midwest, native to Pacific Northwest.
Sure. It could be European. Let me rephrase that. Native most likely would be what I would do, but if it was going to be like a European kind of thing, that'd be fine. Like over in Europe, a lot of people do ponds with like some of the sturgeons.
Okay.
So there, I can't remember the name. Is it the diamond sturgeon? But there's one that's like 3-4 feet. So it's like you could kind of, I'll say quotations here, air quotations, could keep in an aquarium. So I would love to do like a cold water setup. And if it was native fish, probably like flyers, not necessarily bluegill, but like up here we have the pumpkin seeds. I think a lot of them are like hybrid morphs.
Those fish are gorgeous.
They are gorgeous.
Those fish, oh my God.
If they kept that color pattern 24/7, I feel like that fish could dominate the market.
Does it drop off, that color? Or is it seasonal?
Yeah, I think it's mainly the males during about this time of the year when people get their fishing license renewed and you're catching them. That's when they're looking awesome. During the fall, they do subdue it down a little bit, but I think the pumpkin seed is exceptionally cool looking.
And they're aggressive. Like they're
territorial, but I feel like you could keep them with other stuff. Like you're going to do your typical community native tank. It's you got your sunfish, and you have your bullhead catfish, and you might have like your large like chub minnows in there. Just because the sunfish can't eat those guys.
I need a Google image of chub minnow.
But there is one I would love to play with, and this is the one easier one because a lot of these sunfish, they're big. For those who don't know much about them, a lot of them you get 8 to 14 inches in size. But there's one called the dollar sunfish that comes from Florida, and they're size of maybe your average smartphone.
Yeah, this guy right here with the orange, and he's got this kind of an interesting eye spot.
Yeah, so
behind his actual eye.
That's a sweet fish, and then I guess the other kind of unicorn fish I would love to do for a native fish tank because I've kept these guys before, off and on, growing up.
Oh, really?
Would be, you should be looking in there. It's called a pickerel.
Oh boy,
like tripe and grass pickerel, or redfin pickerel. So it's basically a mini version of a pike.
Oh, jeez.
But they don't get much bigger. That's right there. That's full grown. I want to say they're like between 12, 16 inches.
Yeah, that does look just like a pike.
So it's you got that kind of mini monster fish is what I would call it. But it's something containable, I would say, in most households. You could easily do that like in a 180 or a little bit maybe smaller.
So you'd need to run a chiller for these guys, right?
You probably don't need to run a chiller. A lot of the native fish technically don't have to run a chiller because you got to think if it's living in Florida, I mean, Florida's hot.
Oh, okay.
But if it's I feel like if you're catching, if you're keeping a bowfin, you would probably want to have a chiller, because I think most of those are from the Great Lake regions.
Yeah, I was going to say, I just immediately assume if this thing's a pike, it's coming from the Great Lake.
Yeah, and I feel like they do dip down. I'd have to look at the temperatures on them, but it's been a while since I kind of read up on these guys.
Well, and the rainbow darter, I mean, that thing is a super pretty fish too. And we've got a pretty good looking native fish to the Pacific Northwest. Yeah, look at the rainbow darter. That is just
gorgeous fish right there.
That is awesome. It's the Olympic mud minnow.
Okay, so Corey was talking about that.
Yeah, but we can't keep them though because they're protected. I think it's protected because it's native. I think it's a pup fish.
Yeah. And that's the one thing tricky with some of the native fish. It's a lot of it's collected, they're seasonal, and then certainly living here in the state of Washington, we have to make sure it's illegal.
Yeah, he's got that killifish vertical tiger pattern kind of striping. Mm-hmm. He's got some blue iridescence on the top of him. Just real pretty fish. And the fact that it comes from the Olympic Peninsula or in our region.
So that's why I want to play with these, because that's something you're not going to find those at any pet shop. I don't think there's a pet shop in the country. Not necessarily this fish, but I don't feel like you're going to see too often a pumpkin seed at a pet shop. Mm-hmm. I feel like if they're in there, that's usually by accident. They came in on their goldfish. Mm-hmm. I mean, I have seen certain bullhead catfish available in there, or I've seen gar being sold at shops. But I feel like for the most part, your native fish, or certainly your cold water fish, you're just not going to find those.
Yeah, it just brought to my mind how cool this hobby is, that people can go down so many different rabbit holes, and that you can just have so many different interests, or somebody could specialize and just go full crazy on one aspect of the hobby.
And I think what's cool is any of these things, and probably the next thing I'd want to do is do a full-on biotope setup. So I always thought would be kind of cool was do a biotope setup of Lake Tanganyika, Malawi, but if you did it also as a paludarium, so you'd also try to find the plants that would go on the outside of there.
Huh.
So
that'd be interesting.
Yeah, so I don't know if I don't know where petunias come from, but maybe they do come from that area. And I was maybe if you had little petunias hanging out above the water.
I feel like that'd have to be a big, deep paludarium, though.
But yeah. I've seen big ones. I've seen one of the pet shops around here. I feel like it's a 75-gallon paludarium kind of style.
75 include for the water portion?
Maybe not quite the water. The water might be 40, but let's say you're doing shellies or something in there.
Yeah, because at AGA this past couple weekends ago, they had a very, very large paludarium, and it was maybe 40 gallons of water, and then 3 feet of terrestrial paludarium, vertical up, and that thing was a monster.
Yeah,
and that becomes. I mean, and an aquarium is already a piece of furniture in your house as it is, but this is
aquariums are furniture. I always refer it as a piece of furniture.
Yeah, it's a living piece of furniture. Yeah, where this thing, it's now you're basically hitting the wall, you're hitting the ceiling. This thing is now a wall in your house. It's a piece of furniture that's taking up the wall. It's you're getting rid of that massive china cabinet, that massive china hutch, which I don't know how many people have those anymore.
I think we have one still in our house.
There you go. I think it's something that's probably phasing out of our interior decorating tastes, but it's just massive like that. So.
Yeah, so I've seen the huge custom built paludarium. So I guess what I would say is, I think it'd be freaking sweet.
But do it, yeah, absolutely.
Would be and I don't know what you do, because I feel like if you're you could easily do it with South American. I can just totally have tropical stuff and have the Amazon tree boa or the red-eyed tree frog hanging up there. I feel like you could do Asia style, but I was man, I think it'd be cool as heck to do the Rift Valley Lake style, because I think you could do a Congo version easily. Imagine have your Shodanite puffer under there, and you have whatever creatures on chameleons hanging out above.
But I feel with the Rift Lakes though, isn't it just kind of shoreline and grass? I don't know if it's all that. I don't know if they have.
That's the thing. I don't fully know on what hangs out. I think it is. What I've seen pictures, it's definitely tree line is. I feel 20 yards back from the lake, and it's certainly sandy shoreline and areas. But maybe take off like the zoo does. How they have those essentially the paludariums when you walk in there, and they have the ocean shorebirds. Maybe you have. Interesting. Some kind of flightless parrot or something. Yeah.
What's something like a fish species or a fish type that you just don't get? That you're just no, I just don't understand what. And not that you're gonna poo-poo on it, but just don't get it.
That's a good question, because I definitely could name my coworkers ones. They're I don't get it.
Oh, is it the blind tetra?
Oh no, because that's just like a weird oddball fish. Like who wouldn't want some kind of mutant freak, nature created fish that's been built for a cave? So I know Caitlin, for example, doesn't get goldfish, and she doesn't quite get the livebearers, and I think Nick doesn't get puffers. But I could tell I have a love and respect for all those. I'm trying to think.
He works at the co-op and he doesn't like puffers. Oh man, we gotta.
Yeah.
Did we screen him for that? I feel like that's question number one when we bring people on. Is
I think he's gone tomorrow. No, I think he's slowly getting on the puffers. Man, that's a good question. What fish do I not get? Because I played with it all, and
because for me it's the Asian arowana. Arowanas in general,
see, I like the Asian. So I like the
arowana.
Asian arowana only because I think the color stuff's cool, and because since we only get the silver arowana, and unfortunately, silver arowana is not the greatest fish to send someone home with.
And it's one of those.
Asian's the one that anyone should be able to keep if they want an arowana.
But I think we're so fascinated with it because we can't have it.
Yeah.
I just don't get this fish that just swims back and forth at the top of the water, like it's only using that one part of the water column.
Yeah. Man, that's a tough one to think. Well, there's certainly some cichlids I just don't get, like tilapias. Most of the tilapias I don't really understand why you want to get. It looks like a mud fish. Okay, so the monster fish. Okay, because I had one that I liked. So the wolffish would be an example. I had the rainbow wolffish. Unfortunately, hopped out of a tank during a windstorm here, and my cats, when they were allowed into that room, spooked them. And they wolffish are jumpers. And he arced out of probably the little area where I had to hang on the back filter.
Right.
But that guy is a fish you can keep in a 40 breeder or a little bit smaller. But then the rest of his little cousins are going to be much bigger. And I think there's the common mudfish. It's what Corey and I would dub as a brown turd fish.
It's actually called the common
mudfish. But there's a big one, and I have a friend who had one. I can't remember. I'm spacing on the name, but they get 6 feet and they eat like caimans.
Oh my goodness!
And it's that's a monster fish, but I don't get it.
Yeah. Peacock bass, I don't get.
Yeah, peacock bass, I could get that one. I just feel like if you really want a bass, you could have one out from the lakes around here. But just keeping bass is they're little Pac-Mans. They just want to constantly eat. And I feel like no one keeps something like that long.
Mm-hmm. Do you get axolotls?
I think that the little smiley face on them is cute.
I think from an evolutionary standpoint, they're a fascinating fish.
I like salamanders.
A fascinating creature, but I just don't get. I don't get the keeping of an axolotl.
I don't mind them. Like I said, I grew up playing with amphibians and reptiles, so there's that's always probably my number. I guess
it's an amphibian, right? Or is it a reptile?
No, it's amphibian. It's amphibian. I guess deep at heart, I'm probably more of a reptile amphibian guy. Mm-hmm. And then fish is certainly in the past few years is the thing that's been taken off. Even though fish has always been in my life, but I guess at home I'm still the reptile number one guy. Mm-hmm. It's just I found that setting up fish tanks, there's a lot of cool stuff you can do with fish tanks. I feel like keeping a snake, it's yep, that's a tank with aspen shavings and your hide hut and your water bowl. Yep, that's another cool snake. Same setup, kind of boring looking. Maybe I can make it into a little bit of terrarium, but I'm lazy and I'm not going to make it look really sweet. Mm-hmm. But I feel like a fish tank, I put time into it. That fish tank looks way different than that fish tank. These fish are way different from that fish. Mm-hmm. So that's where I think the fish have kind of taken over and why I've really gotten deep into it.
One of the topics I want to hit on in a future podcast is I need to find somebody that can really represent and talk about the psychological and kind of calming benefits of fish tanks, right? Why they're in doctors' offices, why they're in these public places, what is it about, what's the research that's been done around the calming benefits of a fish tank.
And I have a customer who has it like that, and I've also had a few prospect customers for some interesting areas. So one of them, a guy, I think he's a marriage counselor. And he has a discus tank in there, and he loves having the discus tank because he can see when
in his office.
That's awesome. Where the clients look at it while they're pouring out their deepest emotions and hatred and feelings out, and he says you can see when one's doing that, the other one's staring at the fish tank, and you can see that I guess they kind of relax once they're kind of watching those discus doing their thing. Mm-hmm. Schooling, which is just an amazing sight. I've caught it a few times in the store. Usually when we're closed, I'm doing my fish order. the discs just kind of chill out and they'll start doing their little school and following around each other.
Yeah.
And it's a cool sight. And then I had another guy came in, and I never really followed up. I'm guessing it was probably got denied, but he worked for a juvenile state pen, and he wanted to get a fish tank in their cafeteria for the kids to look at and have. He knew that there would be some benefits for it.
Yeah, I mean, I've had one snake before, and I can't imagine that there's any academic paper out there citing the psychological stress relief benefits of like staring at a terrarium of
or
a
staring at a
snake
frog. Yeah, no, you don't get it on there. I keep them for other reasons.
And I say that, and I've had bearded dragons before, and I actually recently went to a local like a pet expo, Pacific Northwest Pet Expo that we had. And I did get a critter. I don't want to say what it is here. Maybe I'll talk about it some other time. But it's a cool.
You got a cool critter.
Cool little lizard critter that
Robert approved.
Robert approved. That we're pretty excited about. But I mean, it is kind of neat that you can physically interact with them, right? Like it's not something I'm not going to just walk around all day long.
And you can make
with
a cool
thing.
setup for that. So like that's not something like a boring
yes
aspen bedding.
But that being said, though, this is kind of a nocturnal creature. You're not going to get the benefit of, like, I just don't think that the same psychological benefit will be there even with this particular lizard creature.
Oh, totally.
Right? This reptile, as it would be with a fish tank.
There are a lot of times at night, like I'll be brushing my teeth or something, and I'm watching like one of my fish tanks. I could stare out and just zone out at one of my fish tanks for like an hour if I want to. Yeah. I can't do that with the reptiles. Certainly, I think with the reptiles, I love more like the research on them and like finding the coolest, like, all right, what's the next kind of coolest thing? I actually probably found that more enjoyable now than actually sometimes keeping them. And I can't even accept that. So now that's my thing. I go home. I just like to like read on something.
I just watched a little short. Maybe we'll just conclude with this because we're hitting, we're over an hour now, and I thank you for coming on. But I watched a little short online of about Snake Island. Are you familiar with Snake Island? It's like 30 miles off the coast of Rio de Janeiro, Brazil. And it's the most dangerous island because it's just nothing but these vipers. Like this super, it's like the number 8 most venomous snake on the planet, the most dangerous snake on the planet. And so they took this crew there because it was along with research, and they're there to get the snakes, document how many they're catching, sizes, and then ultimately to milk them for their venom, right? To do all sorts of antidotes and what is it, like heart medicines and stuff.
I think Lipitor comes from death adders.
Oh wow, yeah. So would you go there? Like if you had the opportunity? Because the Brazilian government is incredibly strict on who gets to go there.
No, because I don't want to die.
So your love for snakes and
it's more for like garter snakes, bull snakes, rat snakes, something that's like I could handle. I don't really get the venomous keeping. That I don't understand. So
you can't keep venomous snakes in this state, can you?
Not anymore. You could have them if your grandfather did. They outlawed them like 15 years ago.
That seems just like a smart thing to do.
It is a smart thing to do.
I'm not much for the government, including a ton of legislation. There's some in the canine world that I think we need some government legislation. In this reptile world, though, it's like the keeping of venomous snakes and like being able to go online and buying an alligator. Like those seem like things that
like when it's something like eats people or like it could its venom drops like the equivalent of 200 humans. If that thing gets out and like you're in an apartment, I mean that sounds like a terrible idea to me. As opposed to like my ball python escaped. Like what's in danger? The rat probably in your apartment.
So anything that you keep, could it take down a chihuahua?
So I made that rule. I used to keep some stuff. I used to actually play some reticulated pythons for a while, and I made a new rule. Just one day I kind of woke up like it can't hurt me.
Those are like the 20-footers.
Yeah, if you got mainlands. I was playing with super dwarfs, so they stayed much smaller. And I just realized like I don't want to die, and I don't want to have like my cats. I'm secretly a cat guy. I can't have my cat being eaten. So basically anything that could cause harm to me or a cat, it had to get out of my house.
Okay. Yeah, so that's it's just you're going to bring this thing into your home, and if it gets out, and snakes are escape artists.
Yep.
Like your small children, your small animals may be in danger. Like that's a scary thing.
And I known with venomous stuff, it's not if, it's when. When is it going to hit you? That's the word that kind of comes up on that kind of stuff. It's like, it's not if, you're going to get struck at some point.
So now, is it like a minority of the states allow you to have venomous snakes, or is it like, I would imagine it's on the decline?
I would assume so. Definitely. I think USARK is the one that like fights for like the reptile legislation in favor for the keepers. So they're always fighting against some new county. Banning stuff. So I'd say very much it's getting harder to keep dangerous reptiles. So whether it's venomous or it could potentially constrict you.
Man, that is crazy. All right, Robert. Well, thank you very much for coming on. This has been a fantastic, fun conversation, and I hope people that they get a chance to tune in and actually watch you do unboxings. Now they've got a little bit more of a behind the scenes on who you are and why you're an awesome person, and why I'm glad that I can call you a friend. So thanks for coming on.
Thank you.